This is a quick tutorial for creating an n8n AI agent. Let's jump into it. So you may already have a bar across the top here if you're new to n8n that says try now and trying to promote their AI agent workflow. So you go ahead and click that if you had it, but I do not have that anymore. So I'm going to create a new workflow. So the first thing actually I want to point out as far as an AI agent is a little bit different than the way some of these other automation platforms may handle it. So if you're used to something like n8n, they don't actually have an AI agent. They just have a node for connecting to something like OpenAI. So in this case, n8n has jumped on the AI bandwagon a little bit, and they've created something that's a little more akin to the AI agent handling as opposed to just creating a node. So they realized that you're actually going to need more than just a node. You're going to need a few more connections. So if you search for AI, you can create an AI agent node. And in this case, tools agent is fine. This is kind of their standard. It's going to connect to a chat trigger. So a message coming in is what would trigger the AI. Going to require specific output, and we'll get back to that. So now you have this AI agent node that's a little more complicated than something like make.com, where you normally would have had to create your inputs and outputs. In this case, it lets you aggregate some extra connections together to make the AI agent a little bit smarter. So as you can see, you have connections for a chat model, of course, because you need to connect to an AI model, some memory so that it can keep track of the conversation that's happening right now, some tools, so that's just things for it to reference. And then in this case, I just added an output parser just to make sure that when the agent responds, it responds in a certain format so that we can more easily connect it to the next thing and have it do something else. So in this case, we're going to connect to an AI model. So obviously you have a lot of different options here in n8n. So you could do Anthropics if you want to connect to Claude, a few different options for OpenAI, AWS, Google, Olama. So you could connect to something like DeepSeek or some other models, some other open source models. But for now, I'm just going to do OpenAI. So I've actually already connected it, but if you were to connect your own, you would go ahead and create your new credential here, which is easy enough. You just need an API key. So assuming that you had an OpenAI account that you paid for and you can get an API key, I'm going to go switch over to that real quick. So you would log into your OpenAI platform and then you go down to API keys. And you could create a new project for it. Default project also fine. I went ahead and created a new project for it. And then you would create your new secret key, giving it a name, whatever, test agent. And then you would create your secret. Once that's generated, you would copy that API key. And back in n8n, you would plug in your API key, save, and you get a connection like that. So once you're connected to your AI model source, so in this case, OpenAI, you would then select your model. So in this case, we're just going to use GPT 4o mini. Not the smartest, but like it can get the job done as far as reading and responding. We're not doing anything too fancy here. So now, yep, that should go away. So now we have an AI model connected to our AI agent. I mentioned memory. There are some pretty complicated memory options. So if you wanted to have like a huge history of like the entire chat you've ever had, that's where something like a Postgres chat memory would come in because that's like a full database table. But in this case, we're just going to do a window buffer memory, which it even marks as easiest. It's just going to keep track of the last 5 messages, which is fine for the context. Once you get past 5 messages in the conversation, it will start to forget what you had talked about 5 messages ago. But again, this is a super simple AI agent. You really probably shouldn't be using it for anything that complicated anyway. It's more probably like a FAQ on a website kind of bot. So you really shouldn't be having a long conversation with it. So in that case, window buffer with 5 conversations is fine. As far as tools, so this is things for it to reference when it's going to be chatting. So this is how you can make it a little bit more personalized than just the general model that OpenAI has already trained. In this case, you could connect to another n8n workflow. So that's a really nice way to then kick off another scenario and have something more complicated happen. You could have it run some JavaScript or Python, call out to another API. Vector store is actually the real power here as far as being able to have a huge memory of things. Not going to do anything with that this time, but I would really like to get into that later. So I'll have an example of that hopefully in the future. Same with these other options. Some of these services provided by things like Pinecone. So it's just a specific service that lets you host a vector store and then reference from your AI agent. But in this case, I'm going to do something really simple, and we are going to connect to Google Sheets. I'm going to give it a little bit of context with some social media topics. So this is what it will reference when it decides to generate some content for us, because I'm going to have it create some LinkedIn content. So now it has a reference sheet, so it knows kind of what to talk about now. We don't have to tell it. And then I'm actually going to structure the output so that we can control a little bit how we handle the AI, the agent's response. So I'm going to create some JSON here, just a really simple JSON object. And this will help it know how to format the response. n8n will also kind of coach it into controlling, structuring the output correctly. But just because there's a chance that the AI agent may not create the expected response that we'd like. But at this point, we basically have everything we would need for an AI agent. There's a message that's going to come in from a user. The AI agent then will intercept that with the OpenAI chat. So it'll send the message to the OpenAI. OpenAI then, the OpenAI model then, using the AI agent node, will be able to access the memory. So it'll double check what the last messages were and if those matter. And they can now look at the Google Sheet that we provided. So one of the tools, and then it'll output its answer based on the structure. So the last piece we have here is we just need to make sure that it is set up correctly to handle that. So what I'm going to do is a system message. So we're just going to prompt it with something to give it some guidance on how it should function as an agent. So we're going to say, you are a helpful social media writing assistant. Please reference the social media topics bank for topics to talk about. Let's say, talk about when creating content. Return your answer, or let's say, format your output in JSON, like this object. Okay. And so that will tell it, letting it know that it's a helpful social media writing assistant. It should look at the list of topics so that it knows what to talk about. And then we're going to format our output into JSON. I'm going to grab the content of that JSON structured output so that it knows a little bit how it should be responding. And we're going to go ahead and plug that back in. So we're giving it that example just to kind of reinforce that that's the output that we want. But n8n also recommends that you should connect the output parser, which we've already done. So we should be good to go at this point. All right, now that we have the AI agent all set up, let's go ahead and test it out. As you can see, the trigger for the agent is a chat message, and you can click on the chat message down at the bottom here. And it should have enough context for everything here. So I can just say, let's create the next post idea and submit. And we can see that it's checking one by one. It's going through the list of topics in the spreadsheet to get some ideas. And then it structures its output correctly and spits out an answer. So let's double check and see what we got. Perfect. So new post idea, n8n, the ultimate tutorial for beginners. And that's great. So that means that I didn't tell it anything about that, right? So when I sent in the message, all I said was, let's create a new post idea. I did provide n8n topics for it to talk about. And when it created its answer, it actually produced content about n8n. So it actually read the document that was provided and was able to even follow the instruction of outputting the answer in a formatted JSON. So that makes it so much easier now at this point. So if we were to connect this to Google Sheets and say we want to put that into a separate Google Sheet, so append row, I have a separate LinkedIn content bank that I want to add my next post to. So we'll connect to that sheet 1. And then it is as simple as it may be. I've had a little bit of trouble with this before, depending on the format. It actually accepted it. So there we go. Now we would be able to append that output into the spreadsheet. And there you have it. That is a simple AI agent in n8n. I actually plan on talking about AI agents a little bit more in depth in the future. But this is just a quick way to get started. I think the use cases for them are actually pretty limited, even though there are a lot of videos on YouTube right now that are suggesting otherwise. A lot of the times the models are not the most reliable, or they would need a lot of iteration to really get the proper answer. So I don't know that these should be used as extensively, but it is really nice though to be able to just have all of these nodes connected up in one node. It makes it much easier to get something like that started. So that is a quick starter for getting your AI agent set up if that's something you want to do. Hopefully this was helpful. I'm going to continue creating content like this, hopefully creating a little bit more complicated scenarios in this, maybe connecting our AI agent into some larger data sets and some other more exciting things. But for now, this is just a great place to get started. So let me know if you have any other questions or any other content that you would like to see, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.